So, the Stanley Cup playoffs continue for the Toronto Maple Leafs after an overtime win over the Boston Bruins in Game 5 of their Eastern Conference quarterfinal. And the main takeaway, and look, I know I've been hard on Toronto over the last couple of days because of how abysmal they have played. This was a good performance from them. Congratulations, you've done it once in a row. Also, just a quick aside here. If they come out and win two more times, to advance to the next round, all the cold takes exposed are going to be ridiculous. That everything that was said about them in the moment has been 100% accurate. If this just is now the way it's going to be, then they have changed, and congratulations. But I think we're allowed to acknowledge that there has been a change, because the first few games weren't very good. This was a Toronto team without Austin Matthews that traded this situation with the urgency and desperation that the situation deserved. And we haven't always been able to say that about the Toronto Maple Leafs in situations like this. But they came out and they battled and they controlled things against Boston. They weren't able to break through until they were on a real, it comes from a point shot, but it's a real hardworking play. You get Domi getting just enough of a face-off. Marner comes in, gets the puck first, gets it to the point. McCabe, boom, scores. That's what you want. And even the overtime winner, Tavares, who I've been hard on, drives to the front of the net, chance stop, Nyes is crashing in, scores. Nyes and Robertson, more so Nyes than Robertson, but I do think there's something there with Robertson. Those are the guys who, in the future, are really going to have to step up for this Leafs team to try to find that next level that a lot of people think they can get to. But they put on a ton of pressure on the Bruins in this game, and it was quite frankly a performance I didn't think they had. So good for them for not going quietly into that night. And also good on Wall, who was, I thought, really good here. There was a chance right at the start of the game. Boquist gets, I'm pretty sure it was Boquist, gets a just clear lane right to the goal, and he makes that stop. And there were a few times Marchand set up, I think it was Boquist again, another opportunity in tight where he was able to make that save. So he was not pressured often, especially early in this game, but he stood tall when he needed to, and goddamn did this team need him to stand tall. On the Bruins side, this is the type of performance that I was worried about coming into the postseason after a lackluster close to the regular season. Boston is only in this series and not one against Tampa Bay because they absolutely were sleepwalking their way to the finish line. And this looked like a sleepwalking team that just, you know what? It's more fun to beat them in Toronto. Maybe we'll win, maybe we won't, whatever. That this did not seem like a Boston Bruins team that was ready to have that killer instinct to put a team away. And maybe they come out in Game 6 and absolutely throttle them. But now you have a Florida Panthers team that is waiting for you after as easy as playoff series go. That was an easy one for the Florida Panthers over the Tampa Bay Lightning. So this is why I just couldn't get into Boston as a team that could really threaten for a Stanley Cup this year, because I just don't think there is that next level to this team. They've had a good series. Absolutely. Marchand's been great. But I just don't think this team has that killer instinct that others have had in the past where they're, you know what, maybe we will, maybe we won't. Those types of performances do come back to bite you. And I didn't like what I saw there. Speaking of which, the Winnipeg Jets series is now in the books as they fall to the Colorado Avalanche, in Game 5. I believe the final ends up being 6-3. It might be more, but it was close until it wasn't at the end there. For Winnipeg, this was awful. This is a very talented hockey team that just, again, speaking of finding that postseason level, they didn't have it. They looked like they were just out there, especially coming off of such an emotional game in Game 1 where the crowd is going crazy, and it's almost like they were expecting that crowd to lift them up again, and they never got back to that level. These looked more like Games 83, 84, 85 of the postseason than it did Game 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of this playoff series, and that hurt them. Look, Hellebuck was not great, but they were awful in front of him. I do think that this is the blame pie. I think there's more to the players up front than there is to Connor Hellebuck to give in this particular situation. So, yeah, just awful. Just awful hockey from this team, to the point where, you look at going forward, it's like, okay, where is the better coming from now? They're locked in on Scheifele. They're locked in on Hellebuck. There are pieces on this team that I like. Look, I like this team a lot. I like Ehlers. I like Morrissey. I like Connor. There are a lot of pieces on this team that you really like, but this was a startling close to the season for the Winnipeg Jets. And just a couple notes here. I hated the strategy at the end of the game where it was constant dump and chase, dump and chase, dump and chase. Vancouver did the same thing, and we'll get to them in a second with Pettersson and Miller winning a race into the corner, setting up a better chance. But dump and chase in theory is great when you are the bigger, crashier team and you can go in there, bing, bang, boom, get the puck. You've just beat up their team and now you get an opportunity. But Colorado was just a step ahead. And so late in the game, it felt like the last 5 minutes felt the same pattern. Jets dump it in, Avs first to it, clear. Jets dump it in, Avs first to it, clear. Jets dump it in, Avs first to it, clear. It was just the same cycle over and over and over again. But this is the design of everything. So you have to do it. And this is my problem with dump and chase during the regular season. And I've brought it up before, and I saw it again this weekend doing some minor hockey play-by-play. So many teams. Kid will obviously be the most talented out there. But you know what? Dump and chase, because that's what coach tells me to do. We need to stop with this. And this is one of the exact reasons why. What happens when plan A doesn't work? Because I'm going to tell you something. In the playoffs, plan A don't work. It is surprising when plan A does work. And plan A for the Jets was to dump it in, and plan A for the Avalanche was to get it first and get it out. And that's what it was the whole time. And so this is why I don't mind, or I actually encourage in the regular season, carry that puck in. Work on your controlled zone entries so that when the dump and chase isn't working, you at least know what plan B is. Like you look in basketball, for example, you look at the best basketball team in the world right now, the Denver Nuggets, and Jokic just has it all down to like basically a computer program. If yes, there. If no, here. If no, here, go there. If yes, there. You know, like just there's a lot of if-thens all over for him. And it's perfect. And it makes that offense flow amazingly. And there's different options off of each one of those. Like it's set up so well. With the Jets, it was, if no, do it fucking anyway and hope that it works. And that it's not going to. And so I think while the regular season is obviously very important for positioning and blah, 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 I do think it is also an important time to work on different situations differently, if that makes sense. Like, try some different line combinations and see what works so that when you're getting into your season being on the line, you can know, okay, well, back in June, July, or January, February, that worked. So let's try that for a little bit. And you know what? For this game against Columbus, it doesn't really matter. No dump-ins. Let's carry that puck in the whole way and see what we can get. And then if you're down 3-1 in the third period, all right, let's start working on our dumps a little bit here and try to win a hockey game. But I feel like everyone falls into this pattern. And I know I preached systems with Vancouver a little bit to try to get that back, but part of it is having a plan B. Like every system looks great in practice when there's no resistance, but everyone is just so focused on, okay, this is what we're supposed to do. This is what we're supposed to do. This is what we're supposed to do. So we're going to do it. What happens if you have to go sideways? How do you adjust? And Winnipeg just didn't seem to have that adjust in them in this game. Colorado though showed up, and basically everyone, right? Like McKinnon had like 1,000 points. Makar had 1,001. Lehkonen was great. Nichushkin just doesn't stop scoring in the postseason, apparently. All of the players came to play for Colorado. This was an entire organization stepping up, an entire organization understanding what it takes to win at this time of year. And a big thing that it takes is your goalie playing big. And while Georgiev wasn't spectacular, he was good enough, and he was great in the last little bit of this game, where the Jets had a few chances with like 3, 4, 5 minutes left to get this one to a 1-goal game and get a bunch more life into the whiteout in Winnipeg, and they just couldn't do it. And the Avalanche were able to shut the door from there. Georgiev coming up with those big stops was huge. And now the Avalanche get to wait at least a few days before before Vegas and Dallas wrap up their series. And that is such a luxury for them to be able to reset and get ready for another series. Quickly, Vancouver-Nashville. It just wrapped up a few moments ago from when I'm recording it, so I don't have a ton of notes on this one. But Vancouver, they just couldn't put it away. Offensively, they got some good chances off the rush. Actually, some real good looks off of the rush that were stopped. But they just couldn't sustain anything until late. And they got a great look late. Besser had a few opportunities to be the hero one more time, but it just was not to be. But overall, in the body of this game, Vancouver's offense just wasn't there in the way that I felt that they needed it to be for them to step up in this series and advance beyond. And we had said coming into things a couple days ago, this was a big game for Vancouver take it on home ice, and be able to rest for a few days. And maybe you get closer to a Thatcher Demko return, although it does seem like that's not happening in this postseason. But you just let a young team that is really dealing with a lot of this for the first time be able to take in everything that they've had and be able to breathe a little bit. But now you are going back to Smashville for game 6. And if that doesn't go well, then you're a young team going into a game 7 in a nervous barn in Vancouver. So this was actually a real big loss, I think, for the Canucks. On the Nashville side, they have dragged this series into Nashville Predator hockey. Low event, grinding out defense, and when there are chances, UC Saros standing on his head. Both goals tonight come from defensemen, albeit in different ways. I am a little surprised that there was no challenge on the first goal. It felt like Savoie was kind of pushed in, but clearly they didn't, so they didn't challenge. And then point shot where there's a screen in front. Again, even with this is another loss for Vancouver, both losses for Vancouver, where you're looking at it, and even with Demko in there, the offense didn't play well enough to think that you could get a win, even with Thatcher Demko out in the lineup. Lastly, Carolina takes care of business against the New York Islanders. Quick note on the Islanders, I don't know where the better is coming from here. This just feels like a team that is set in like 7th, 8th, or 9th in the East, and they are going to be battling to try to get in the playoffs. In some years, they'll even squeak into a top 3 spot in their division, but overall, it feels like this team is stuck, and I don't know where the better is coming from with the Islanders. For Carolina, their better came in this playoff series. Aho steps up. Teravainen had a couple big looks. Kakaniemi was snake bit, but I thought he played really well in this series. There was just a lot of players on Carolina who came to play. The thing that concerns me is Freddie Anderson looked not great. Like, Carolina had a chance to run away and hide in this game, and Freddie Anderson allowed the Islanders to stick around for as long as they did, with some pretty shaky goaltending. And if we are to presume Boston advances past Toronto, they're going to, by a significant margin, have the worst goalie in the playoffs. And that's not an awesome place to be. So I have concerns about Carolina moving beyond this point, but the series against the Rangers is going to be a blast to check out. So those are just the notes from what we saw in the NHL last night.